thing that's at the forefront of every Tobagonian right now is the licensing officers being in Tobago and all that has been said and done over the past week. So, in a nutshell, what are your initial reactions to it?
Well, it seems that the country, Candice, good morning, Tobagonians. It seems that we on the edge of anarchy, if we are not there as yet. Um, Having said that, the question is how do we move forward and what are our options moving forward? How do we prosecute those options and what are the likely outcomes? So, as a student of management, that's how I look at it. If I'm going to frame it, that's how I'm going to frame it. Um, Firstly, we want to put on record that two things. Act number 8 of 88 gives the Tobago House of Assembly its own public service. There's no debating that again. The constitution that was amended stating that and changing the definition of a public officer and introducing a new definition, one in the service of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, and one in the service of the Tobago House of Assembly. That's what the act says. And then you have our own act, Act number 40 of 1996, that clearly says that the Assembly shall, in the pursuance of its duties, of its business, it can take such decisions and do all acts that are necessary for the better performance of its business. So that's the key. The question is, or we know historically that we had indigenous Tobagonians functioning in the Tobago House of Assembly in licensing. So Tobago has, since the inception of the acts, since way back as Act number 37, has been responsible for licensing. So it's not a new thing. So we have had the experience of prosecuting licensing matters in Tobago. So we need to let the public understand the historical context. And that continued into the new Act, Act number 40 of 1996. And it's there, like customs and all of that. In the period of 1996 to 2001 under Hochoy Charles, and that is when I was a secretary, we have had a situation whereby we took charge of those matters under the 5th schedule. We had our own town country division. I introduced certain measures in cooperatives, in labor, and even consumer affairs, because those are entirely new divisions. All right? Because we understood the ethos, we understood what the intent of the legislation to bring for autonomy. Now, having said that, you want to disabuse some people's minds that people keep speaking about greater autonomy. There's no such thing as greater autonomy. Autonomy is autonomy. It has one meaning. You will never see in the dictionary, any serious dictionary, you will never see a term greater autonomy. So I'm hoping that people will stop using the term greater or lesser autonomy, right?
But I mean, when it comes to the licensing officers now, I mean, and just the way they have been operating, because we saw that the chief secretary said over the weekend that the licensing officers, like as you rightfully explained, falls under the THA, but
Yes.
it seems as though that they are taking their instructions from elsewhere.
So let's speak to that. So I was framing the historical context to bring us to the present, right? Now, so we have a situation now where licensing officers are coming to Tobago. On the face of the law, of it all, if you were to speak like a lawyer, there doesn't seem to be a legal prohibition of them coming here. Now, the question is, since from 2001 to 2 years ago, when this new team took over, the PNM under Orville London and Ansel Dennis and the rest of them did not take over in the way they could have and should have the responsibilities of town country of licensing. Let me explain.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a manpower issue, and acceptance of the role that, hey, I am in charge of the licensing of what the law says. How do you prosecute it? You have people like McKenna and Patrick and all the rest of them, homegrown Tobagonians. But there is an organizational structure. Organizational structure are developed to deal with the exigencies that you have, the vision that you have, and the general social or socio-political or socio-economic conditions of the day. So you have to have manpower to deal with those issues. And clearly, as there were more cars in Tobago, the economy was growing, you expected that the government under Owen London to have responded to those developments, the social developments, the economic development. People will be getting a little bit more affluent, perhaps in parentheses, so they'll buy more cars. And then because you buy more cars, you will have, as the commissioner claims, the transport commissioner claims, that vehicle theft and all of those things. So you have to have a manpower to prosecute those things. The PNM administrations did not put the manpower in place. Now, the law says, and the judgments that speak in obiter, in passing, would question, where is your policy? What is the policy of the Tobago House of Assembly regarding licensing? Now, you can't blame this administration. They're just there a year and a half, thereabout, and are now getting a full understanding of all those issues that they have to attend to. So they have now, going forward, as per my opening remarks, have to begin to look at the manpower that is needed to properly prosecute their responsibilities under the law.
And what about in terms of, you know, the way how they've been going about this exercise? Because we had the licensing, the transport commissioner, sorry, on with us last week saying that they're just here to educate the people, emphasize, improve the level of safety, because of course, you know, your vehicles need to be up to a certain standard, because if it's not, that could cause dangers out on the road. And he's not wrong for saying that, but the question becomes then, how do you go about educating people in such a way that it does not affect the society as a whole?
Good governance must respond to your economic times and circumstances and social circumstances, so that where you have a situation where you have the Commonwealth Games. Now, I always tell people that how you fire someone, or a police officer, how you arrest someone, you always have the power of arrest. You always have the power to fire or to hire, to appoint or disappoint. So 2 weeks down the road will not prohibit the licensing officers or authorities from doing the work. Now, I remember some years ago, you had, in fact, it happened to me, you had to present your owner's certificate, right? And so that if you purchase a ticket, your certificate of ownership will mesh with what the vehicle number and all of that. And it was discontinued. So that the influx of vehicles, had they continued that policy, then you would have arrested certain issues of vehicle theft and vehicles coming into the big. So one of the things that the Assembly should do, working with the Port Authority, because they have authority for wharves and all of that, I am suggesting to the Chief Secretary and his team that they should hold discussions promptly with the Port Authority that vehicles coming into Tobago, you must show your owner's certificate, right? Because I know it used to be a policy. Now, people say it's one country and shouldn't do that. It's like between San Fernando and Shogunas, or San Fernando and Port of Spain. But here you're crossing the waters. You have an authority here that says, I'm responsible for wharves. So they can say, our policy going forward, we want to see your owner's certificate, and that will give all the details of the vehicle that you are perhaps driving. If you're driving a rented vehicle, or you're driving someone else's vehicle, once you are purchasing that ticket, it will give all the details. So I am suspecting that there have been some kind of malfeasance in the discontinuation of that particular policy. Going back to the manpower issues, in responding to these social challenges and developments of affluence, and people just want to have their own transportation. So you have more information and data to enter into your licensing system or a database. What has to happen is that the assembly, through the chief administrator, who has devolved powers from the DPA, can determine, along with the officials at the DIPU, to fill the vacant positions, and determine through an assessment, your manpower assessment or needs of the division, particularly in licensing, how many officers you would need.
And unfortunately, we have not been seeing that. But we're going to take a quick break there. So viewers, please don't go anywhere. We'll be right back and I'll continue our conversations with Mr. Max James.
Summerama, real steam for the summer standard. There's a dream for the summer. Dreamy, steamy, standard. What you have? What you have? All the best deals, no drama. Standard be beat like a hammer. Go tell your friend, tell your papa, tell your mama. We got more, we got more. Standards have what you're searching for. Quality brand, discounts galore. New things for the summer, online in store. Summertime is here, so make the most out of it at Standard. Never beaten on quality and price. It's nice.
Are you looking for a place for your loved ones? Heavenly Care welcomes you. Located at Northside Road opposite Massey Motors, we offer a variety of services. These include doctor visitations, social activities, geriatric care, and much more. Contact us at 277-9595 or visit us at Northside Road opposite Massey Motors. At Heavenly Care, compassion is at the heart of all care.
Right now, Tobagonians are just currying down to Bonaccord, right in Stobie Local Road. You know why? To come down and shop at Authentic Builders General Hardware, the only hardware store in Tobago that is giving you guys Trinidad prices. So for instance, such as steel, half-inch and 5/8, $7,895. 5/8 construction ply for $260. Every single thing that you will need to do your home renovation or start your new construction, we have it right here. And to get your quotation, it's very easy. Just WhatsApp us at 272-1990 and we will do your free WhatsApp quotation for you.
Tobago updates. Good morning, Tobago. Wake up with Kandace and Denise.
Let's go, go. It's a brand new morning. Rise up to a brand new dawning. As the passion start to rock.
Not just in licensing operations, but in terms of the new Motor Vehicles Act, those new laws that have come into play in recent times. Like we don't really have that being enforced here in Tobago, and then all we have is a group of officers coming to Tobago for 6 to 8 days at a time and causing disruptions in the place.
Right, and hence what I said at the opening, in my opening remarks, we're heading towards anarchy if not there, right? And clearly we are at that point. So let's close on that point of the manpower. Succession planning, manpower succession planning, to be more specific, there's a dearth of that throughout the country. But it is particularly disturbing that after 15 to 20 years in power, the PNM administration did not see it fit to have the necessary succession planning in place in terms of our manpower, so that with the emergence of these new pieces of legislation, you need more staff. You have to fill the vacancies that were left by officers who exited the service based on their retirement age. So that I wager that all of the licensing officers down at Milshirv are Trinidadians. Now, we're not being insular, but the fact is that you need homegrown persons who are accustomed to your culture and the way of doing things. You want to develop an indigenous labor force within the division as far as possible, so that where you don't have the skills here, then you ask for the skills elsewhere. The chief administrator has devolved powers to her. In this case, it's a woman, and the chief secretary, who she reports to, she needs to be given instructions to do the research in solving the manpower issues. Now, if you solve the manpower issues, you would not have to have officers coming from Trinidad. Because so when you have the power, you have to have the political will, you have the money in your votes, or you could via and transfer the money. So I think that going forward, that's what the Executive Council needs to do, to instruct the chief administrator along with the secretary of DIPU to get the manpower issues resolved. And that way, you will not see 10 and 15 white shirts coming to Tobago. We'll have our own local homegrown white shirts here.
If you, I mean, just a cursory glance at what's been happening over the last few weeks, whether it be the licensing officers in Tobago, the actions of the police, and so on, what is one word you can use to summarize all of that?
I think it's unfortunate, unfortunate from all sides. I kind of feel the regular police officer is empathetic or sympathetic, whichever way, to what is happening. I think it's the decision makers in Trinidad who don't understand that we have things here to do. In fact, you're seeing that businesses are not thriving over the last 2 weeks up to now, because people are at home, people are not coming to some hide and seek.
How did it affect your business in particular?
Sales were low. And then you compound that with the fact that people are at the games. So it's a double whammy on business activity. And it certainly is not a good thing. You want to do your policing, let's do it in a particular way. You want to do your regulation of the traffic and ownership and theft and so on. If you signal to the population, a man has a stolen vehicle, perhaps he knows it's a stolen vehicle, and you are signaling that to him that you come in to look for stolen vehicles. So when the commissioner makes that point, he's absolutely crazy, because I will just stay at home.
Yes.
Because I'm not going to come in town or travel anywhere because you already signaled that you're coming to look for a stolen vehicle.
And then how would, in terms of like how the police has been acting and the messaging that's coming from our ACP stating that he doesn't need permission to operate in Tobago or to bring officers over, you know, how would you describe, like, what are your views on those statements coming from our ACP?
Well, I know, to be honest, I know the ACP quite well. I can't really have a valid criticism of the fact that he's saying I don't need the permission. One thing is missing, however. What I think he could have tempered the statements and a bit more diplomatic, and to say, well, we are working with the Chief Secretary and the Tobago House of Assembly, and we are cooperating in the whole question of licensing and protecting the situation regarding the theft of vehicles and all of that. So I think that he could have been a little bit more diplomatic. He's correct. I mean, academically he's correct. But I think that we need to develop a solid platform where all of the authorities work with the Chief Secretary. He is the head of the government here. And he's not an ordinary citizen. He's not an ordinary man. And therefore, I think that how we communicate and to say that I have the authority, I think that where the police fell down, right? And that because it breeds a certain kind of, it puts us in a very difficult situation. The regular man saying, look, our chief secretary is being disrespected. And I think that the communication could have been different.
All right, and that's the point where we're going to have to leave our conversation
Yes.
this morning. I want to thank you so much, Mr. James, for being on with us and giving us your perspectives on all of these things that are happening here in Tobago. Right? So, viewers, please don't go anywhere because we got a lot more coming up for you still on GMT. So, back after the break.